The first noble truth: life contains suffering. Greetings, my friends. Today, we're stepping into the heart of the Buddha's wisdom, beginning with the first noble truth, a teaching that's both a gentle whisper and a resounding thunderclap. Life, as we live it, contains suffering. In Pali, the ancient language of the Buddha's time, this is called dukkha, a word that doesn't slip easily into English but carries the weight of pain, unease, dissatisfaction, and the subtle friction of existence. Picture a wheel on an old wooden cart rolling down a dusty road. Sometimes it glides smoothly, sometimes it wobbles unevenly, and sometimes it catches on a stone and grinds to a halt. That's dukkha. It's not a proclamation that life is nothing but misery, far from it. The Buddha cherished the beauty of the world, the melody of a bird's song at dawn, the delicate bloom of a lotus rising from muddy waters, the pure, unrestrained laughter of a child. But he saw with piercing clarity what we so often turn away from: suffering is an inescapable thread woven into the fabric of our human experience. I've carried this truth in my heart for decades, not as a burden, but as a lantern illuminating the path. I've walked through the rice paddies of Southeast Asia, sat in the shadow of Himalayan peaks, taught in the glass towers of New York, and meditated on the windswept cliffs of California. Everywhere I've gone, from the poorest villages to the wealthiest cities, I've seen dukkha in the tears of the grieving, the clenched fists of the frustrated, the quiet sighs of the restless. And I've felt it too, in my own body, my own mind, my own journey. Today, I invite you to sit with me, not to dwell in despair, but to look with courage, to understand with compassion, and to begin a journey toward freedom. Let's explore this truth together, step by step, breath by breath. A personal encounter with dukkha. Let me take you back to a moment that etched this truth into my soul. It was years ago, during a retreat I was leading in the hills of northern Thailand, a place where the jungle hums with life and the air hangs heavy after the monsoon rains. The scent of wet earth and wildflowers filled the space as we gathered under a simple bamboo roof. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, a young man named Samsak approached me. His face was shadowed with grief, his eyes red from tears he'd tried to hide. "My wife left me," he said, his voice breaking like a twig underfoot. "I gave her everything, my time, my love, my dreams. Why is there still pain?" I gestured for him to sit beside me, the rain tapping a soft rhythm above us. We listened to it for a while, letting the silence hold his question. Then I said, "Samsak, the Buddha didn't promise a life without loss. He didn't say our efforts would shield us from hurt. He said suffering is part of being here, it's the ground we all walk on." I watched him take a shaky breath, his shoulders trembling as he let the words sink in. We sat there, two souls under that fragile roof, and I saw the first flicker of understanding in his eyes, not an answer that erased his pain, but a recognition that it wasn't his alone to bear. That moment stayed with me, a reminder that dukkha isn't a personal failing, it's a shared truth. The many shapes of suffering. Suffering isn't a single note, it's a symphony, played in countless keys. Sometimes it's loud and sharp, like the sting of loss that Samsak carried. Other times it's a dull ache, a quiet companion we barely notice until it grows heavy. I've known it in my own flesh. In my early years as a monk, I lived in a remote village in Laos, where the days were long and the nights cold. One season, malaria swept through like a silent thief. My skin burned with fever, my head pounded as if struck by a hammer, and for days I could barely lift a spoon to my mouth. My body, once strong from walking miles in meditation, became a fragile shell. That was dukkha in its rawest form, unyielding, physical, undeniable. But it's not just the big moments that define suffering. It's the small frictions too, the daily ripples that wear us down. The frustration of a missed bus on a rainy morning, when you're already late and your shoes are soaked. The sting of a harsh word from a friend, cutting deeper than they meant it to. The quiet loneliness that creeps in, even when you're surrounded by a crowd, standing in a packed room, smiling, but feeling unseen. These are the threads of dukkha, subtle yet persistent, stitching themselves into our days. I've witnessed this tapestry of suffering across the world. In New York, I met Claire, a lawyer with a corner office overlooking Manhattan. She had a life most would envy: designer suits, a sleek apartment, a calendar full of high-profile cases. "I've got it all," she told me over coffee, her voice flat. "But I wake up every day feeling empty, like I'm chasing a ghost." In a refugee camp in Bangladesh, I sat with Amina, a mother who'd lost her home to floods. Her hands cradle the tattered photo of her children, her eyes hollow with worry for their next meal. In a classroom in Sydney, a teenager named Liam confessed, "I scroll TikTok for hours, looking for something to laugh at, but it never fills the hole inside." Physical pain, emotional wounds, the restless itch for more, these are the strands that bind us, from skyscrapers to slums. The Buddha's threefold lens, understanding dukkha. The Buddha didn't just name suffering, he dissected it, offering us a lens to see its depth. He spoke of three kinds of dukkha, each revealing a different face of this truth. Let's walk through them together, slowly, so we can feel their weight and their wisdom. Dukkha, the obvious suffering. First, there's dukkha, the suffering we all recognize, the kind that announces itself without apology. This is the pain of illness, the shock of injury, the finality of death. It's the broken leg that keeps you awake at night, the fever that saps your strength, the goodbye you never wanted to say. I've lived it. Beyond that malaria in Laos, I recall a time in my youth when I fell from a rocky path during a pilgrimage in India. My ankle twisted, the pain shooting up my leg like fire, and for weeks I hobbled, leaning on a stick. That was dukkha, direct, physical, impossible to ignore. I've seen it in others too. In a hospital in Tokyo, I visited a man named Kenji, his body frail from cancer. Tubes snaked from his arms, his breath shallow, yet he managed a weak smile. "It hurts," he whispered, "but I'm still here." His pain was dukkha, a stark reminder of the body's fragility. And who hasn't felt it? The headache after a long day, the grief when a pet dies, the sting of a cut finger, these are the loud notes of suffering, echoing through our lives. Viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. Then there's viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change, subtler but no less real. This is the ache that comes when the good things fade, when joy slips through our fingers like sand. Picture a perfect day, you're with friends, the sun warms your skin, laughter fills the air, and everything feels right. Then the sun sets, the group disperses, and a quiet sadness settles in, not because anything went wrong, but because it ended. That's viparinama dukkha. I felt this keenly during a retreat I led in Tuscany, Italy. The rolling hills stretched out like a painting, dotted with olive trees and vineyards. For a week, the group danced, meditated, and shared stories under a golden sun. The final day was a celebration, music, hugs, promises to stay in touch. But as we packed up, tears flowed. "I don't want it to end," one woman said, her voice trembling. Even happiness, when it shifts, reveals dukkha. It's the birthday party that winds down, the vacation that ends with a flight home, the song that fades to silence. Change is inevitable, and with it comes this bittersweet sting. I've seen it in small moments too. In a cafe in Seattle, I watched a young couple share a pastry, their eyes bright with new love. A week later, I saw them again arguing, their faces tight with hurt. What was sweet had soured, and viparinama dukkha whispered through their words. It's the nature of life, nothing stays, and that impermanence carries a quiet pain. Sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. Finally, there's sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence, the deepest and most elusive. This is the unease of being human, the restlessness of a mind always wanting, always becoming, always caught in the cycle of me and mine. It's not loud like a broken bone or sharp like a goodbye, it's a hum, a background noise we rarely notice until we sit still. A tech founder in San Francisco once laid it bare for me. We met in his sleek office, screens glowing with data, his name on a Forbes list pinned to the wall. "I built a company worth millions," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But I'm terrified it'll crash. I can't sleep, I'm always planning the next move." His success didn't erase the restlessness, it fed it. That's sankhara dukkha, the mind's endless chase, the subtle anxiety of holding a self together in a world that won't stand still. I've felt it too. In my early teaching years in the West, I'd finish a retreat, hundreds of students, glowing reviews, and still lie awake, wondering if I'd said enough, if I'd reached them. It wasn't failure, it was the itch of existence, the need to be someone doing something. In a retreat in Nepal, a woman named Tara put it simply, "I'm happy, but I keep waiting for the next thing." That waiting, that becoming, that's sankhara dukkha. The universality of suffering, a deeper dive. Let's linger here, because dukkha isn't personal, it's universal. The Buddha saw it in the palace of his youth, where silk cushions and golden bowls couldn't shield him from the truth. He saw it in the streets of ancient India, where he met the sick, the old, the dying, a monk's robe his only shield. I've seen it too, across continents and cultures, in faces young and old. In a Mumbai slum, I watched a boy chase a kite through mud, his grin wide as the sky until it snagged on a wire and he crumpled, sobbing. In a Paris cafe, I overheard a couple argue over a forgotten anniversary, their voices sharp with hurt, coffee growing cold between them. In a village in Guatemala, I met a farmer named Juan, his hands rough from years of toil, his eyes weary from drought. "The rain doesn't come," he said, "and I don't know how to feed my family." From the richest to the poorest, dukkha doesn't discriminate, it's the air we all breathe. Yet it's not static, it shifts with our lives. As a young monk, my suffering was physical: hunger from fasting, blisters from walking barefoot on rocky paths, the ache of sleeping on a thin mat. Later, teaching in the West, it grew subtler: the pressure to explain the unexplainable, the ache of watching students wrestle with their own pain, the quiet doubt of whether I was enough. Today, it might be the twinge in my knees as I kneel to meditate, or the soft sadness of friends lost to time. Your dukkha is yours, unique in its shape, yet shared in its essence. I've seen it in children too. In a school in rural Vietnam, a girl named Lynn showed me her drawing, a bright sun over a house. "My brother broke it," she said, pointing to a torn corner, her lip trembling. In a playground in London, a boy kicked a ball alone, ignored by his friends, his shoulders slumped. Even in innocence, dukkha finds a foothold. And in the elderly, it deepens. In a nursing home in Chicago, I met Margaret, 87, her hands gnarled with arthritis. "I miss dancing," she said, her eyes misty. "Now I just watch the world go by." Her body, her memories, her fading strength all whispered dukkha. From cradle to grave, it walks with us. Stories of dukkha, a global tapestry. Let me weave you a tapestry of dukkha from my travels, so you can see its reach. In a fishing village in Sri Lanka, I met Priyantha, a man whose boat sank in a storm. "I lost everything," he said, staring at the sea, his hands empty. His livelihood, his pride, swept away. In a subway in Seoul, I saw a woman in a crisp suit, her face buried in her phone, tears streaking her cheeks. "My boss fired me," she later told me, her voice hollow. In a desert camp in Morocco, a Bedouin elder named Hassan shared tea with me, his eyes tracing the horizon. "My son left for the city," he said. "I don't know if he'll return." Loss, rejection, separation, dukkha in different tongues, different lands. In a prison in Texas, I met Jamal, a man serving 20 years. "I miss the sun," he said, his voice low. "And my daughter, she doesn't know me anymore." His bars were steel, but his suffering was deeper. In a market in Cairo, I watched a vendor named Fatima haggle over a handful of dates, her brow furrowed. "Prices rise, but my wages don't," she sighed. In a tech hub in Bangalore, a coder named Arjun confessed, "I work 16 hours a day, but I'm still behind." Struggle, confinement, exhaustion, dukkha wears many masks. The gift of seeing, awakening, not defeat. Here's where the Buddha's genius shines: seeing dukkha isn't defeat, it's awakening. He didn't point to suffering to crush us, he pointed to it so we'd stop running, stop hiding, and face it with courage. It's not a curse, it's a call to wake up. In a retreat in Colorado, I watched a woman named Lisa sob as she spoke of her divorce. "I thought I'd be happy forever," she said. I held her hand and said, "The Buddha saw this too. It's not your fault, it's life." She nodded, tears slowing, and I saw the shift, not despair, but recognition. This truth isn't meant to trap us, it's meant to free us. When I was young, I resisted it. I thought meditation would erase pain, that enlightenment meant no more tears. But in a monastery in Burma, I sat through a storm, rain lashing the roof, my stomach empty, and realized, suffering doesn't vanish. Our clinging does. The Buddha's gift is this: see dukkha, and you're no longer its prisoner. Let's try it now. Close your eyes. Breathe in deeply, then out slowly, like the tide. Where do you feel dukkha in your life? A tight chest from stress? A circling worry about tomorrow? An old scar that still stings? Don't fight it. Don't fix it. Just notice it, like you'd notice a cloud drifting across the sky. Sit with it for a moment. This is the first truth: suffering is real, and meeting it is the first step to freedom. Practice meeting suffering with kindness. Let's deepen this. Find a quiet spot, your room, a park bench, anywhere you can be still. Sit comfortably, spine straight but soft. Rest your hands on your lap, palms up, open. Close your eyes if it feels right. Take 5 slow breaths, inhale for 4 counts through your nose, exhale for 6 through your mouth. Feel your body settle, your mind soften. Now, bring to mind a suffering you carry. Maybe it's a recent fight, words you can't take back. Maybe it's a fear of tomorrow, money, health, the unknown. Or an old memory that won't fade, a loss, a regret. See it clearly, like a guest arriving at your table. Don't push it away, don't cling to it. Say softly in your mind, I see you, suffering. I'm here with you. Breathe into it, imagine your breath wrapping it in warmth, like a blanket. Stay with it for 2 minutes. Feel its edges soften, its grip loosen. When you're ready, open your eyes. This isn't about fixing, it's about witnessing. You're not solving dukkha, you're meeting it with kindness. That's where the first truth lives, not in words, but in your heart. Reflections: living with dukkha. Living with dukkha doesn't mean surrendering to it, it means dancing with it. In a retreat in Bali, a man named Wei Yin told me, my crops failed this year. I cried, then I planted again. That's the dance, feel the pain, then step forward. In a cafe in Berlin, I met Anna, a musician whose band broke up. I was lost, she said, but now I play alone, and it's enough. Suffering shifts, and so can we. The Buddha saw dukkha in his own life, leaving his family, facing hunger, watching disciples falter. Yet he smiled under the Bodhi tree. Why? Because he saw it wasn't the end, it was the beginning. In a village in Kenya, I met a grandmother named Esther, her hands worn from years of work. Life is hard, she said, but the sun still rises. That's the first truth: suffering is here, but so is beauty, so is breath, so is possibility. Closing, the lantern of awareness. The first noble truth is your lantern. It lights the shadows, not to scare you, but to guide you. I've carried it from Thailand to Texas, from slums to skyscrapers, and seen it wake people up. In a park in Vancouver, a boy asked, "Why do bad things happen?" I knelt and said, "They just do. But we can face them together." He nodded, and I saw the spark: awareness, not fear. So, my friend, take this truth with you. Feel your dukkha, the big pains, the small frictions, the quiet hum. Don't run. Sit with it. Breathe with it. It's not your enemy, it's your teacher. May you walk with courage, with kindness, with peace.